Imagine a world where the lines between love and duty, privilege and poverty, and past and present blur into a tangled web of secrets and emotions. A world where a single moment can change the course of lives forever. This is the world of she was the housekeeper's daughter, and he was the heir to a vast estate. From the very first second, you're going to be pulled into a story that's as much about the heart as it is about the mysteries that lie buried beneath the surface of a sprawling, opulent estate. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about two people from different worlds. It's about the choices they make, the secrets they keep, and the bond that refuses to be broken, no matter how much time has passed or how many obstacles stand in their way. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to get the answers you've been searching for. So, if you're ready to dive into a tale of love, betrayal, and the kind of twists that will leave you breathless, keep watching. Because this isn't just a story, it's an experience. Let's talk about you for a moment. Yes, you! The one sitting there scrolling through YouTube, looking for something that's going to grab your attention and not let go. You're here because you want to feel something. You want to be transported into a world that's different from your own, even if just for a little while. You want to connect with characters who feel real, who make you laugh, cry, and maybe even scream at your screen. Well, guess what? You've come to the right place. This story is for you. It's for anyone who's ever wondered what it would be like to have everything or nothing and still feel like something's missing. It's for anyone who's ever been curious about what happens when the past comes knocking, and you have no choice but to answer. So let's get one thing straight right now. You're not just watching this video. You're living this story with me. And I promise you, by the time we're done, you're going to be glad you stayed. Now, let's set the stage. Picture this, a grand centuries-old estate nestled in the rolling hills of the American countryside. The kind of place that looks like it's been plucked straight out of a fairy tale, with its towering spires, manicured gardens, and a history as rich as the family that owns it. This is the Ashworth estate, a symbol of power, wealth, and tradition. And at the center of it all is him, Ethan Ashworth, the golden boy, the heir to the Ashworth fortune, and the embodiment of everything this estate represents. But Ethan isn't just a privileged rich kid. There's more to him than meets the eye. And as the story unfolds, you're going to see just how deep his layers go. And then there's her Lila Harper, the housekeeper's daughter. Growing up on the estate, Lila was always the girl in the background, the one who knew her place and never dared to dream of anything more. But Lila isn't just a quiet, obedient girl. She's strong, resilient, and has a fire inside her that even she doesn't fully understand. And when she and Ethan cross paths again after years apart, that fire is about to be reignited in ways neither of them could have ever imagined. But here's where things get interesting. This isn't just a story about two people reconnecting. It's about the secrets that have been buried for years, secrets that threaten to tear apart everything they thought they knew about each other and themselves. Why did Ethan suddenly leave the estate all those years ago? What really happened between him and Lila when they were kids? And why does it feel like there's something or someone standing in the way of them finding their way back to each other? These are the questions that are going to keep you hooked, and I'm not going to give you the answers right away. Because where's the fun in that? As we dive deeper into this story, you're going to meet a cast of characters who are as complex as they are captivating. There's Eleanor Ashworth, Ethan's mother, a woman who's as cold and calculating as she is elegant. She's the kind of person who always gets what she wants, no matter the cost. Then there's Daniel Harper, Lila's father and the loyal housekeeper who's been keeping secrets of his own for years. And let's not forget about the other players in this game, friends, enemies, and everyone in between who all have a role to play in the drama that's about to unfold. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about love. It's about power, ambition, and the lengths people will go to protect what's theirs. It's about the choices we make and the consequences that come with them. And most importantly, it's about the idea that no matter how far apart two people may seem, there's always a chance for them to find their way back to each other if they're willing to fight for it. So what do you say? Are you ready to step into the world of the Ashworth estate and uncover the secrets that have been hidden for far too long? Are you ready to meet Ethan and Leela, two people who are about to discover that the past isn't as far behind them as they thought? And are you ready to find out what happens when a childhood bond is reignited and the stakes are higher than ever? If the answer is yes, then you're in for a wild ride. Because this is just the beginning, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. But before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. Take a moment to think about the last time you felt truly invested in a story. The last time you found yourself staying up late, just to see what happens next. That's the feeling I want you to have right now. Because this story, it's going to stay with you long after the video ends. And if you're anything like me, you're going to be counting down the minutes until the next part. So, here's the deal. You're about to get a front row seat to a story that's going to make you laugh, cry, and everything in between. But I need you to do your part too. Stick with me until the end. Don't click away, no matter how tempted you might be. Because the answers you're looking for? They're coming. But you're going to have to wait just a little bit longer to get them. And when you do, it's going to be worth it. Now, let's get back to the story. Because something's about to happen that's going to change everything. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into a world where nothing is as it seems. And the only thing you can count on is the unexpected. Because this is just the beginning. And the best part? You're about to find out what happens next. The Ashworth estate wasn't just a home, it was a living, breathing entity with a soul of its own. Its sprawling grounds, ancient oak trees, and ivy-covered walls whispered secrets of generations past, secrets that seemed to seep into the very air everyone breathed. For Leela Harper, the estate had always been a place of contradictions, a place of beauty and wonder, but also a place where she was constantly reminded of her place in the world. Growing up as the housekeeper's daughter, she had learned early on that the Ashworths lived in a different world, one where the rules didn't apply to them. But there was one exception to that rule, Ethan Ashworth. As children, Ethan and Leela had been inseparable, their bond forged in the innocence of youth and the freedom of endless summer days. They had been each other's refuge, a safe haven from the expectations and pressures that came with their respective roles. But that was before everything changed. Before Ethan left without a word, leaving Leela to wonder if their friendship had ever meant as much to him as it had to her. Years later, Leela had built a life for herself outside the shadow of the Ashworth estate. She had a job, a small apartment in the city, and a sense of independence that she had fought hard to achieve. But when her father, Daniel Harper, fell ill, she had no choice but to return to the place she had tried so hard to leave behind. The estate was just as she remembered it, grand, imposing, and filled with memories she had spent years trying to forget. What she hadn't expected was to run into Ethan on her first day back. The boy she'd had once known was gone, replaced by a man who carried himself with the confidence and authority of someone who had been born to lead. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of the old Ethan, that made her heart skip a beat. And just like that, the past came rushing back, bringing with it a flood of emotions she wasn't ready to face. Ethan, for his part, had spent the last decade trying to live up to the legacy of the Ashworth name. As the heir to the estate, he had been groomed from birth to take over the family's vast empire, a responsibility that weighed heavily on his shoulders. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. His life was a carefully curated facade, one that left little room for the kind of authenticity he had once shared with Leela. Seeing her again after all these years was like a jolt to his system, a reminder of a time when things had been simpler, when he had been free to be himself. But the past wasn't the only thing that had resurfaced. There were questions that needed answers, questions about why he had left, what had happened between them, and whether it was too late to make things right. As Ethan and Leela navigated the awkwardness of their reunion, they couldn't help but notice the undercurrent of tension that seemed to permeate the estate. It wasn't just between them, it was everywhere. Eleanor Ashworth, Ethan's mother, was colder and more distant than ever. her sharp eyes always watching, always calculating. She had never approved of Leela, and it was clear that her feelings hadn't changed. Then there was Daniel Harper, Leela's father, who seemed to be hiding something, his illness only adding to the air of mystery that surrounded him. And lurking in the background was Marcus, Ethan's childhood friend and the estate's groundskeeper, whose loyalty to the Ashworths was matched only by his resentment of the privileges they enjoyed. Each of these characters had their own secrets, their own motivations, and their own roles to play in the drama that was unfolding. But the estate itself seemed to have secrets of its own. Strange things had been happening, doors creaking open in the middle of the night, shadows moving where they shouldn't, and an eerie feeling of being watched that no one could explain. At first, Leela tried to brush it off as her imagination, but as the days went on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was as if the estate was trying to tell her something, to warn her about the dangers that lay ahead. And then there were the dreams, vivid, unsettling dreams that felt more like memories than figments of her imagination. Dreams of a young girl with long, dark hair running through the halls of the estate, her laughter echoing in the empty corridors. Dreams that left her waking up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. As Leela delved deeper into the mysteries of the estate, she began to uncover fragments of a story that had been buried for decades. It was a story of love and betrayal, of promises made and broken, and of a tragedy that had been swept under the rug. The more she learned, the more she realized that the past was not as distant as she had thought. The secrets of the Ashworth estate were not just about Ethan and her. They were about the people who had come before them, the choices they had made, and the consequences that had rippled through the generations. And as she pieced together the puzzle, she couldn't help but wonder if history was destined to repeat itself. Ethan, meanwhile, was grappling with his own demons. The more time he spent with Leela, the more he realized how much he had missed her, how much he had missed the person he had been when he was with her. But the weight of his responsibilities and the expectations of his family made it difficult for him to let his guard down. He wanted to tell her the truth about why he had left, about the pressures he had been under and the choices he had been forced to make. But every time he tried, the words caught in his throat. And then there was the matter of his mother, who seemed determined to keep him and Leela apart. Eleanor had always been a master manipulator, and it was clear that she had her own agenda, one that didn't include Leela. As the days turned into weeks, the tension between Ethan and Leela continued to grow, their unresolved feelings simmering just beneath the surface. But they weren't the only ones feeling the strain. The entire estate seemed to be on edge, as if it was bracing for something big. And then, one night, everything changed. Leela was in the library searching for clues about the estate's history, when she stumbled upon a hidden compartment in one of the old bookshelves. Inside was a stack of letters, yellowed with age and tied together with a faded ribbon. As she began to read, her heart raced. The letters were from a woman named Clara, a name she had never heard before. But as she read on, she realized that Clara's story was intertwined with the Ashworths in ways she could never have imagined. And then, at the bottom of the stack, she found a photograph of a young girl with long dark hair, the same girl from her dreams. Leela's hands trembled as she held the photograph, her mind racing with questions. Who was Clara? What had happened to her? And why had her story been hidden away for so long? She knew she had to show Ethan, but as she turned to leave the library, she heard a noise behind her. She spun around, her heart pounding, but there was no one there. Just the faint sound of laughter echoing through the empty halls. And then, the lights went out. To be continued, the darkness in the library was suffocating, pressing in on Leela from all sides as she stood frozen, clutching the photograph and letters to her chest. Her breath came in shallow gasps, the sound of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. The laughter she had heard moments before still echoed faintly, a haunting reminder that she wasn't alone. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing the familiar shelves and furniture of the library, but nothing out of the ordinary. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck that she couldn't shake. She knew she had to get out of there, to find Ethan and show him what she had discovered. But as she took a step toward the door, the floorboards creaked behind her, and she spun around, her light catching the faintest glimpse of a shadow darting out of sight. By the time she reached the main hall, her nerves were frayed and her mind was racing with questions. Who or what had been in the library with her? And why did it feel like the estate itself was alive, playing some twisted game with her sanity? She found Ethan in the study, his brow furrowed as he pored over a stack of documents. He looked up as she burst in, his expression shifting from surprise to concern as he took in her disheveled appearance. "Leela, what's wrong?" he asked, rising from his chair. She didn't answer right away, her hands still shaking as she held out the photograph and letters. "I found these in the library," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something you need to see." Ethan's eyes narrowed as he took the photograph, his breath catching as he studied the image of the young girl. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice tight with emotion. Leela explained about the hidden compartment and the letters, watching as Ethan's face grew paler with each word. "Clara," he murmured, his fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. "I've heard that name before, but I never knew who she was. My mother never talked about her." Leela's heart sank as she realized that even Ethan, with all his privilege and access to the Ashworth legacy, had been kept in the dark about this part of his family's history. But before they could delve deeper into the mystery, a sharp knock at the study door interrupted them. It was Marcus, his usual stoic expression replaced by one of urgency. "You need to come see this," he said, his voice low and grave. "There's something in the East Wing." The East Wing of the estate had always been off-limits, a part of the house that was sealed off and shrouded in mystery. Even as children, Ethan and Leela had been forbidden from going there, the warnings from Eleanor and the staff enough to keep them away. But now, as they followed Marcus down the dimly lit corridor, Leela couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something that had been hidden for far too long. The air grew colder as they approached the heavy wooden door at the end of the hall, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story of their own. Marcus hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open, revealing a room that had been frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, faded tapestries, and a sense of melancholy hung in the air, but it was the portrait above the fireplace that caught Lila's attention. It was the girl from the photograph, Clara, her eyes filled with a sadness that seemed to reach across the decades. As Leela and Ethan stepped further into the room, they noticed something else. A journal lying open on a small desk, its pages filled with elegant handwriting. Leela picked it up, her heart pounding as she began to read. The entries were dated over a century ago, written by Clara herself. They spoke of a love that had been forbidden, a secret affair with a young man who was not of her station. But it was the final entry that sent a chill down Leela's spine. "They will never let us be together," Clara had written. "But I would rather die than live without him." The words were followed by a single sentence, scrawled in a shaky hand, "The estate will never let us go." Before Leela could process what she had read, a loud crash echoed through the room, causing all three of them to jump. The portrait of Clara had fallen from the wall, the glass shattering into 1,000 pieces. But that wasn't the only thing that had fallen. Behind the portrait was a hidden compartment, and inside was a small, intricately carved box. Ethan reached for it, his hands trembling as he opened it to reveal a ring, a simple gold band with a single emerald. "This was my great-grandmother's," he said, his voice barely audible. "But why was it hidden here?" Leela's mind raced as she tried to piece together the fragments of the story. Clara, the forbidden love, the hidden ring, it all pointed to a tragedy that had been buried for generations. But what did it have to do with her and Ethan? And why did it feel like the estate was trying to tell them something? As they left the East Wing, the weight of what they had discovered hung heavy in the air. But the mystery was far from over. That night, Leela was awakened by the sound of footsteps outside her door. She sat up, her heart pounding as she listened. The footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside her room. She held her breath, waiting for the door to open, but instead, she heard a voice, a soft, melodic voice that sent a shiver down her spine. You shouldn't have come back, it whispered. Leela's blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. It was Clara's. To be continued, Leela's heart pounded as Clara's voice faded into the silence, leaving her paralyzed in the darkness. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. She wanted to believe it was her imagination, a trick of her mind brought on by the stress of the past few days, but deep down, she knew better. Clara's presence was real, and the estate was trying to tell her something that had been buried for far too long. Determined to uncover the truth, Leela threw off the covers and grabbed her flashlight, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. She had come too far to turn back now. The answers were within reach, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone stand in her way. As she stepped into the hallway, the floorboards creaked beneath her feet, the sound echoing through the empty corridors. The estate felt different at night, alive in a way that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. She made her way to the east wing, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as she retraced the steps she and Ethan had taken earlier that day. The door to the hidden room was still ajar, the faint scent of dust and decay wafting out as she pushed it open. The room was exactly as they had left it, the shattered portrait of Clara still lying on the floor, the journal open on the desk. But something was different. The carved box that had held the ring was gone. Leela's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what had happened. Had someone taken the box? Or was this another one of the estate's tricks? She was about to leave the room when she noticed something she hadn't seen before, a small, almost imperceptible crack in the wall behind where the portrait had hung. Her fingers trembled as she pressed against it, her breath catching as a hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. Without hesitation, she descended, the beam of her flashlight illuminating the steep, winding steps. The air grew colder with each step, the walls closing in around her as she ventured deeper into the heart of the estate. At the bottom of the staircase, she found herself in a small, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with shelves filled with old books, trinkets, and artifacts, but it was the figure standing in the center of the room that made her freeze. It was Eleanor Ashworth, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. In her hands was the carved box, its lid open to reveal the emerald ring. "I knew you'd come," Eleanor said, her voice cold and steady. "You always were too curious for your own good." Leela's mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. Why was Eleanor here? And what did she have to do with Clara's story? Before Leela could ask any questions, Eleanor began to speak, her words spilling out in a torrent of emotion. She told Leela the truth about Clara, a truth that had been hidden for over a century. Claire had been Eleanor's great-aunt, a young woman who had fallen in love with a man her family deemed unworthy. When they discovered the affair, they had locked Clara away in the East Wing, hoping to force her to forget him. But Claire had refused, choosing instead to take her own life rather than live without the man she loved. The ring Leela had found was a symbol of their love, a token that Clara had hidden away before her death. And now Eleanor feared that history was repeating itself. "I tried to keep you and Ethan apart," Eleanor admitted, her voice breaking. "I thought if I could keep you away, I could protect him from the same fate. But I was wrong. The estate has a way of bringing people together no matter how hard you try to keep them apart." Leela's heart ached as she listened, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. The strange occurrences, the whispers, the laughter, it had all been Clara, trying to guide them to the truth. And now, it was up to Leela and Ethan to break the cycle that had haunted the Ashworth family for generations. As if on cue, Ethan appeared at the top of the staircase, his face pale as he took in the scene before him. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with confusion and concern. Leela turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. "It's time to end this," she said, holding out her hand. Together they approached Eleanor, who reluctantly handed over the carved box. Leela took the ring and placed it on the desk, her heart pounding as she prepared to do what Claire had never been able to do, confront the past and break free from its hold. In a voice filled with resolve, Leela spoke the words that had been buried for so long. "Claire, we hear you. We see you. and we release you." As the words left her lips, a sudden gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the candles and plunging the room into darkness. When the light returned, the air felt different, lighter, freer. The weight that had hung over the estate for so long was gone, replaced by a sense of peace that neither Leela nor Ethan had ever felt before. In the days that followed, the estate began to change. The strange occurrences stopped. The whispers faded, and the laughter was replaced by the sound of birdsong and the rustling of leaves. Eleanor, though shaken by the events, seemed to have found a sense of closure, her icy demeanor thawing as she began to rebuild her relationship with Ethan. And as for Leela and Ethan, they finally allowed themselves to explore the feelings they had buried for so long, their bond stronger than ever. But the story didn't end there. As Leela and Ethan stood together on the estate's grand terrace, watching the sun set over the rolling hills, they made a promise to honor Clara's memory by living their lives without fear, by choosing love over duty, and by breaking free from the chains of the past. And as they walked hand in hand into the future, they knew that the estate would always be a part of them, not as a prison, but as a reminder of the power of love and the strength it takes to fight for what truly matters. The end.